Story 1: The Shadow in the Haunted Hill House. In the crisp October air of a small college town, nestled among the sprawling fields and forgotten corners of rural America, there stood a peculiar attraction known as the Haunted Hill House. It wasn't much to look at, a ramshackle structure with a makeshift sign, likely pilfered from a discount Halloween store, that flickered in the dim glow of a single street lamp. The parking lot was nothing more than a patch of trampled grass, barely distinguishable from the surrounding wilderness. For 2 fleeting years, this pop-up haunted house had drawn thrill-seekers and curious locals alike, opening its creaking doors every October to unleash a cacophony of screams and shivers. But its final year, the year it closed forever, was the one that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I was a sophomore in college, carefree and eager for adventure, when my friends, Matt, Michael, and Eddie, convinced me to join them for a Thursday night visit to the Haunted Hill House. Thursdays were our haven. With no Friday classes, we could revel in the night without consequence. The attraction was eerily quiet when we arrived, the absence of a crowd amplifying the unsettling atmosphere. No line snaked around the ticket booth, and only a handful of people lingered at the entrance, their faces shadowed in the moonlight. The ticket seller, a bored teenager with smudged eyeliner, barely glanced at us as she handed over our passes. What we didn't know, what no one had warned us about, was the house's peculiar rule. Only one person could enter at a time. This wasn't your typical haunted house where you clung to your friends, laughing through the fear. Here you were alone, swallowed by the darkness and the unknown. The realization hit us like a cold wind as we stood in the short line, and Michael, ever the brave one, was shoved to the front. I was third in line with Eddie behind me, and as Matt disappeared through the heavy wooden door, my heart began to pound. When my turn came, a woman in a tattered, blood-streaked costume ushered me inside. The door slammed shut behind me, sealing me in a world of flickering strobe lights and oppressive darkness. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and artificial fog, and the narrow hallways were lined with grotesque props, mutilated mannequins, severed limbs dangling from the ceiling, and walls splattered with crimson paint that looked disturbingly real. Actors lurked in every shadow, leaping out with guttural screams or slithering through hidden panels in the walls. Each jump scare sent my pulse racing, my nerves fraying with every step. I was navigating a particularly claustrophobic hallway, the walls closing in like a vice, when I felt it, a brush against my back, light but deliberate. I spun around, hard in my throat, and caught a glimpse of a tall figure shrouded in darkness. A nervous laugh escaped my lips. It was just another actor, I told myself, part of the show. But then the figure moved closer, and instead of retreating or delivering a rehearsed scare, it began to push me forward, its hands firm and unyielding. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, the flashing lights disorienting me as I stumbled along, unsure whether to resist or play along. The pushing stopped abruptly, and I heard a door creak shut. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by my ragged breathing. I stood frozen, waiting for the next part of the act, but the darkness felt wrong, too still, too heavy. Then I felt it again. Hands not guiding, but grabbing, their touch invasive and wrong. Panic surged through me, and I shoved the figure away, shouting, "Get off me!" My voice echoed in the void, but the figure didn't respond. I yelled again, "You're going too far, man! You can't touch people like that!" Still nothing. The silence stretched on, and a chilling realization hit me. This wasn't part of the attraction. Fumbling in my pocket, I pulled out my phone, ignoring the rule against using it. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a cluttered storage room filled with dusty props and janitorial supplies. But my eyes locked onto something else. A man, tall and lanky, standing just a few feet away. He wasn't dressed like the other actors. No costume, no makeup, just a black hoodie, black pants, and a black face mask covering the lower half of his face. His eyes glinted in the light, cold and predatory, and he began to move his arms in exaggerated, mocking gestures, as if pretending to be a character. I bolted for the door, my phone's light bouncing wildly as I retraced my steps through the dark hallway. When I stumbled upon another actor, a teenager in a gory clown costume, he screamed at me to turn off my flashlight. I ignored him, my words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "Someone grabbed me! I was assaulted! I need to get out!" The kid's bravado faltered, and he pointed me toward the exit, muttering that the manager's office was by the ticket stand. I speed-walked through the rest of the house, ignoring the actors and props, my only goal to escape. When I finally emerged into the cool night air, my friends were waiting, their faces a mix of confusion and amusement. "How'd you end up last?" Eddie asked, but his grin faded as I recounted what happened. We marched to the ticket stand, where a worker informed me the manager was absent but would return tomorrow. She promised to alert the team, and after some insistence, refunded my $30 ticket. The next day, a chilling post appeared on Facebook. A girl from our college, someone we all knew, described being sexually assaulted at the Haunted Hill House the same night we were there. Her story mirrored mine: the dark hallway, the inappropriate grabbing, the same sense of dread. She pressed charges against the owner for negligence, and the attraction shuttered within weeks. The staff swore the man wasn't an employee, and I believe them. But the question lingers: how could a place so poorly secured allow a predator to slip through its shadows? I've never returned to a haunted house, and the memory of that night still sends shivers down my spine. Story 2: The Ghost of Trauma. Fort Worth, Texas is a city of contrasts, modern skyscrapers juxtaposed against sprawling ranches, a place where the past and present collide. Every October, the city comes alive with Halloween fervor, and one of its biggest draws is a massive haunted house attraction that promises thrills and chills for those brave enough to enter. For years, I'd avoided it, my childhood trauma casting a long shadow over any desire for manufactured fear. But this year, my friends convinced me it was time to face my fears. To reclaim a piece of fun I denied myself for too long. My childhood was a battlefield. My father's abuse left scars, physical and emotional, that shaped me into someone who flinched at sudden noises and distrusted crowded places. By the time I was 10, he was gone, abandoning my mother, my siblings, and me without a backward glance. The PTSD that followed was a constant companion, triggered by the smallest things: a raised voice, a dark room, a stranger standing too close. But I was determined to move forward, to prove I could handle a night of harmless scares. The plan was simple: a group of 6, me, my friends Noah, Jake, and Ethan, plus Jake's girlfriend Sarah and Ethan's girlfriend Lily, would hit the haunted house on a Saturday night. Noah hosted a pregame at his place, a cozy backyard affair with beer, whiskey, and a joint making the rounds. I rarely smoked weed. It amplified my paranoia, turning every shadow into a threat. But that night I wanted to be bold, to silence the voice in my head that whispered I wasn't strong enough. The mix of alcohol and weed dulled my anxiety, leaving me buzzed and optimistic as we piled into an Uber. The haunted house was a spectacle, its facade a towering Gothic mansion adorned with cobwebs and flickering lanterns. The line stretched for half an hour, but the crowd's energy was infectious, and I found myself laughing with strangers, the buzz keeping my nerves at bay. By the time we reached the entrance, though, a wave of dizziness hit me. I brushed it off, not wanting to dampen the group's excitement. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Screams echoed through the labyrinthine halls, punctuated by the wail of sirens and the clatter of chains. The actors were relentless, their costumes so convincing they seemed to belong to another world. A woman with a slashed throat lunged at us, her eyes wild. A hulking figure in a butcher's apron swung a cleaver inches from our faces. My buzz began to sour, replaced by a gnawing anxiety that clawed at my chest. I tried to stay composed, but the intensity was overwhelming. The flashing strobe lights, the fog that curled around our ankles, the constant jump scares. It was too much. One actor, a gaunt man with hollowed eyes, singled me out, sensing my unease. He got in my face, his voice a guttural growl as he taunted me. My heart raced, but I clenched my fists, determined not to break in front of my friends. We entered a room bathed in a sickly red glow, the air thick with the metallic scent of fake blood. A man in a top hat and suit, his face smeared with crimson, bellowed at us, his words part of the act but chilling nonetheless. I forced myself to focus on my friends, their laughter a lifeline. Then I saw him, a man in the corner, standing motionless, his gaze locked on me. He wore no costume, just plain clothes, but his face, it was my father's. The same sharp jaw, the same cold eyes that had haunted my nightmares for years. A scream tore from my throat, raw and primal, silencing the room. My friends turned, their laughter dying as they saw my face. Sarah grabbed my arm, her voice soft but urgent. "Charlie, what's wrong?" I pointed to the corner, my hand shaking. "It's my dad." But when I looked again, the figure was gone, the corner empty. Confusion rippled through the group, and even the actor paused, his character slipping as he asked if I was okay. I was spiraling, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. "I want to leave," I choked out over and over. Noah, ever the steady one, guided me to a side exit, his arm around my shoulders as we stepped into the cool night air. We sat on a bench outside, the distant screams from the haunted house a cruel reminder of my failure. "You shouldn't have smoked," Noah said gently, trying to ground me. "Your dad wasn't in there, Charlie. It was just your head messing with you." He was right, of course. My father was long gone, a ghost from my past. But the hallucination felt so real, his presence so tangible, that I couldn't shake the terror. When our friends joined us later at a nearby Wendy's, I nibbled on fries, trying to anchor myself in the mundane. They didn't judge me, at least not openly, but the embarrassment burned. That night I crashed hard, the alcohol and weed pulling me into a deep, troubled sleep. In my dreams, I was back in the haunted house, the red room pulsing around me. My father stood in the corner, his voice a low, menacing whisper. "Wake up, Charlie." I jolted awake, my room shrouded in darkness. And there he was, towering over my bed, a grotesque, elongated version of my father, his eyes impossibly wide, his body contorted in ways that defied reality. I screamed, the sound ripping through the silence, and my mother burst in, flipping on the light. The figure vanished, but the terror lingered, my heart pounding as I sobbed in her arms. I swore off weed and haunted houses after that night. The scars of my past are too deep, the triggers too unpredictable. Some ghosts, it seems, don't need a haunted house to find you. Story 3, The Stalker in the Corn Maze. The year was 2020, and the world was a strange, masked place. COVID had turned life upside down, but in our small town, the local haunted house attraction soldiered on, a beacon of normalcy in a sea of uncertainty. My friend Marissa, a seasoned actress at the attraction, convinced me to join the team. "It's fun," she promised, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You'll love scaring people." With no classes, due to the pandemic and a need for extra cash, I agreed. Marissa pulled some strings, and after a quick meeting with the owner, I was hired. The attraction was sprawling, a complex of 3 haunted houses and a massive corn maze that stretched into the darkness. My first day was a whirlwind of rehearsals and costume fittings. I was assigned the role of a damsel in distress, tied to a wooden post in the corn maze, tasked with screaming for help as guests passed by. It sounded simple enough, but when Jeremiah, the supervisor, led me to my post, I was surprised to learn I'd be physically tied up. For authenticity, he explained, though his casual tone did little to ease my unease. He assured me there'd be breaks and a supervisor nearby, but as he walked away, leaving me alone in the rustling cornfield, a knot formed in my stomach. The maze was alive with sound, eerie moans, distant screams, and the hum of hidden speakers pumping out spooky ambiance. A distant air horn signaled the attraction's opening, and I slipped into character, my nerves giving way to excitement. As the first guests approached, I threw myself into the role, shrieking and pleading, "Help me! He's coming back!" Some played along, tossing playful taunts, while others hurried past, unnerved by my performance. The night wore on, and the gaps between guests grew longer, the silence broken only by the rustle of corn stalks in the wind. Then I saw them. Two men, maybe in their 30s, their faces half hidden by COVID masks. They didn't laugh or joke like the others. They just stared, their eyes boring into me. One slowed his pace, his gaze lingering in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. I kept up my act, but my voice faltered as they disappeared into the maze. Minutes later, I heard it, a rustling in the corn, too close to be a guest on the path. My heart raced as I strained against the ropes, peering into the darkness. Then they emerged, the same two men, stepping out of the corn toward me. Their movements were deliberate, predatory. I dropped character, my voice sharp. "You can't stray off the path." One laughed, a low, guttural sound, and they began speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Russian, maybe. The second man moved to the path, standing watch, while the first approached, his hands reaching for me. I screamed, not as part of the act, but from pure terror, my voice tearing through the night. "Help! This isn't part of the act. I'm being assaulted." The man's hands were on me, invasive and wrong, but my screams must have reached someone. A supervisor burst through the corn, shouting, and the men bolted, vanishing into the maze. I was untied, my hands shaking as I was escorted out. I called my parents, who urged me to leave immediately. Jeremiah promised I'd be paid for the night and didn't pressure me to return, but the ordeal was far from over. On the drive home, I noticed a white car trailing me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but when I made random turns and it stayed behind, panic set in. My mind raced back to the men in the maze. Had they followed me? I typed police station into Google Maps and sped toward the nearest precinct, the white car dogging my every move. When I pulled into the station's parking lot, it sped off, disappearing into the night. I sat there trembling for 10 minutes before driving home, checking my mirrors obsessively. I never returned to the haunted house. The memory of those men, their eyes, and the car that followed me lingers like a ghost. Some scares, it turns out, aren't part of the show.